This is our fourth episode of Unforgotten, where we're talking to some of the athletes at Notre Dame that have had their seasons impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, and with a couple of women's golfers, Ayer and Abby Heck. Guys, thanks for joining me. Before we get started, let's just start with the two of you and see, give me an update on where you're talking to me from today and how things have been going. Abby, let's start with you.
Hey, so I'm here in Memphis, Tennessee. Doing pretty well, still adjusting to the new reality. Been volunteering at a oncology clinic here in town, which has been really cool, but really missing golf.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Tony. So I'm Mia. I'm sitting here in Texas in my parents' house. We're all healthy, so I can't complain, but it's definitely made me stir crazy. I've just been working on papers on papers on papers. I've got a thesis and a capstone and some finals due, so kind of writing that out until the end of the semester, and then we'll see what happens.
Abby, I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you've been doing as a volunteer, because I read your blog, which we'll link to in this podcast, which is really interesting. But I want to start with how you guys found out the season was coming to an end. I've talked to women's lacrosse, softball, men's golf, and when all of them were kind of in the midst of their season, all of them were preparing in some way. I know you guys, I think what I read was you guys were in the midst of a practice round when you found out. So it had to be a pretty surreal experience. So I'll just start with Abby again, but I'd love to hear both of you just talk to me. I think it was a Thursday you guys found out, maybe it was a Wednesday. I don't know. The days all blur together now. But just when you started getting word, talk me through the process of like when you heard the season might be in jeopardy to then how you found out and just how you guys coped when you learned that the season was coming to an end.
Yeah, so it was actually the day before the practice rounds that we learned Notre Dame was switching to online classes. At the time, the season was still intact, but I think we knew that might not last for long. And Thursday, we were playing the practice round, and this was in Arizona for the tournament that we host, the Clover Cup every year. And pretty early on in the practice round, some of the conferences, I know SEC postponed their season. And so teams had to start dropping out. And I think as we made the turn, we knew that might be coming for us. The ACC was in the middle of a conference call. And we were on the last hole, actually, when we were told to come inside. We didn't even get to play the last hole of our round. We were pulled off the course, had a team meeting, and that's when we found out that we were suspended. And later that night, the NCAA canceled spring championships. So.
Yeah, it all kind of happened within an afternoon, basically. Like we knew that something was going on and things were probably going to get postponed or canceled, but I don't think the gravity of the situation really hit me until we were pulled off the last hole and coach sat us down and said, this whole tournament's not happening. Everybody's going home. And that really hit hard.
I was going to ask what that experience was like, because I think everybody in the country was struggling to understand how serious it was. And I imagine, like you guys said, you got whispers and they were moving classes and you thought you might still be able to play this tournament. But when they physically said, hey, you can't play golf anymore, get off the course. Was that the moment where you thought, geez, this might be a way bigger deal than we thought prior to this? That had to be it kind of hit you in the face a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What was there when you were with your teammates? I guess I want to know what that room was like. I talked to the men's golf team. They said being around each other was really helpful, at least. I mean, what was the reaction like as you learned from your coaching staff? What were those next few hours like as you guys tried to wrap your heads around what you had just learned? Mia, I'll start with you. Obviously, being a senior, it was probably even maybe trickier to deal with.
It kind of makes me emotional. It was really chaotic, and I don't think I really understood that would be the last time I physically saw some of my teammates for a month or two, and it was a lot of chaos. It was mostly like, okay, you guys need to book your flights, like we need to get out of here kind of situation. But we said some preliminary goodbyes, and there was, I don't know, it was hard to wrap my mind around. Like, it hit me, but not fully.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. It was very chaotic, a lot of phone calls trying to switch flights, figure out plans back at South Bend because I had things outside of golf going on that I had to set straight. And at the time, we also still thought we might be coming back because classes were only suspended until April 13th. So we said goodbye, but also didn't really think it was goodbye. We just didn't know what was going on. It was really confusing.
Was there any part of you guys too? Because I remember, and I asked the men's golf team this, because golf is such a unique sport where you can be physically separated. I know that the PGA Tour was playing the Players Championship that same weekend, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna just play without fans." Was there part of you guys that maybe held out more hope than maybe some of your other fellow student athletes on campus because of the way golf works? That, hey, of course, this is going to happen to the baseballs and softballs and lacrosses. They're playing so close to each other, but we can play at a distance that, a lot of people are saying is safe. We might be spared. Did that thought ever cross through your head that, hey, we might be the lucky sport here?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I've had some friends on the fencing team, and they said that they just weren't allowed to shake hands anymore. And I was like, okay, that's fair. Maybe we'll just not shake hands. We'll stay at a distance and play because we're outside the whole time. And so I thought that's what was going to happen until our assistant coach, Kyle, said that it just wasn't happening. And I know she takes so much time and so much care in planning that whole tournament. And it's just it was shocking that it got canceled and it was done within a couple hours.
I agree with that. So I think they had already switched March Madness to being without fans, and all these other precautions were being taken for certain sports. But I thought for us, especially for the Clover Cup, we were already in Arizona. I thought at least that tournament would stay intact. I thought the decisions would be made sport by sport. I did not cross my mind at all that NCAA would just cancel the spring season, which looking back was a really good decision because I don't think we realized how bad this pandemic would become.
You mentioned it's the tournament you guys host out in Arizona. How much more disappointing was it that it happened right on the precipice of getting to play that tournament that I know is an annual tradition that, like you said, a lot of preparation goes into it. I'm sure there's plenty of pride that goes into the Clover Cup to be literally, right before it was supposed to start and then have it taken away. Did that even just make things in the immediate reaction even tougher to deal with?
Yeah. Originally, I was really disappointed, honestly. It's one of my favorite events of the year, and of course, it's their home event. But looking back, I was talking about it with my team, and we had been able to play our two training trips, and we had gotten a lot of good quality time together, practicing that entire week because it was their spring break. And so we had been there since Saturday. And I think if it was going to end, it was not a bad way for it to end for me personally. I know that I play golf for my team, and I love my teammates, and we were able to spend so much good time together. And I don't know, all things considered, it wasn't a bad way to go out.
I'd agree with that. Even the last practice round, we had a lot of fun together. And as Mia mentioned before, I just felt so bad for our assistant coach. She worked so hard to put that tournament together, and it was sad not to see it unfold. But
Mia, you mentioned having a lot of different things you're working on now as a senior remotely. I'm always curious talking to the students who happen to be student athletes that have all gone back home. You guys are both back in your hometowns. Just tell me what that adjustment period has been like, and maybe what have some of the challenges been this is now, I think I'm losing track, but I think it's week 5 of this working from home or studying from home. What have been the biggest adjustments you've had to make, and just how's that transition gone for you?
Right. So we actually had a SAC meeting. Do you guys know what SAC is? Yeah, we had a SAC meeting last night, and we talked about just these struggles that we've been having, even between teams and between different athletes. And I think the most outstanding thing was just trying to be productive and not really knowing how to manage everything that you're doing in one little space. Everything's happening in your room probably, or just in one house, and just trying to separate work and school and trying to work out, and then not being able to sleep well because it's all happening in the same room and you can't really like put your mind to rest. I think that might be the toughest thing, but what do you think, Abby?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Also, I have 2 younger sisters, and everyone being in the same house has been a little chaotic. We've had some interruptions to each other's classes, unintentional, but it still happens. And so it's just been an adjustment for everyone, to say the least.
Everyone that's got siblings, I've heard, it's been interesting being back home for a long period of time. Families plan for like the spring break or the holiday break, but not the 6 weeks that they're going to come back at the end of the semester when everyone's got school. So I'm praying for the families that have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Mia, you were a senior, and I just, everyone I've talked to, I haven't just talked to seniors. I've talked to a lot of juniors. And one of the first things they talk about is they feel for the seniors because there's just a lot of uncertainty surrounding, especially a month and a half ago, like what was going to happen. And a lot of people, their first thoughts were the seniors. As a senior and as a leader on this team, just how did that maybe affect you a little bit differently? And then what's kind of your mindset as we're about 6 weeks since this has all gone down?
Yeah, like I said, in terms of my team, I can't complain about how my season ended. All things considered, with the situation, with the seriousness of the pandemic, like we're all so blessed and lucky to have healthy family members. We're all healthy. Everyone I know is healthy, and so I can't complain about my situation. But yeah, it's been good. It's been a struggle. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
It's all good. I'm just mostly curious how seniors, and you being one of them, are processing all of the different emotions you can have. And if you haven't processed them, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a work in progress. I'm still processing, but I don't know. I'm lucky enough to kind of have a plan about what's going on, and it's I think I'm ready. It's been tough to process, but I think I'm ready for the next chapter of my life. I think I'm ready to turn a page and start this new me, I guess. I mean, I've been playing golf for the last like 15 years of my life, and so it's going to be definitely an adjustment to not be that person anymore, but I think I'm preparing myself and kind of prepared for that.
Yeah. I just think that, not to pick at the wound, but I think that when you're a senior, you get to have at least a plan and know, okay, it might be coming to an end. And a lot of people just had it stop abruptly.
Right. Yeah.
Abby, for you, I read your blog. I think it went out last week, and I think everyone should go read it. I'm going to put a link in this description so we push people to it. I want to let you explain what you've been up to in Memphis, in your hometown, because I think what you're doing is awesome. And it also sounds like in the midst of all this, this pandemic, you're also getting some really interesting hands-on experience too.
Yeah. So since I got back, I've been volunteering at West Cancer Center, which is an oncology clinic in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm working to help screen patients and visitors for the virus. And what that means, when people walk through the door, I'm the first person they see. I am sitting at a table. I ask about travel history, symptoms, who they've come in contact with recently. And really what we're trying to determine is whether or not people seem like they're displaying symptoms or may have been exposed to the virus, in which case we set up isolation rooms downstairs. And we put them there and they're seen separately. So doctors, nurses will come to them to be seen. We never turn anyone away. That's not what it's about. I feel like some people might be afraid when they hear all my questions that they won't get seen.
Right.
But we're just trying to contain the virus, to prevent its spread throughout the clinic, especially patients with cancer whose immune systems are already compromised. They're especially at risk, and we're doing everything we can to keep them safe.
So first of all, thank you. I think that's awesome what you're doing. I think it's a great service to your community. What is maybe something that, because you want to get into medicine, right? I think I read, are you pre-med?
Yeah, I am.
This has got to be the most unique form of undergraduate, pre-medical work you can do. And I guess just what is maybe the one thing that you've learned in the last few weeks by being on the front lines like you are? Like, what has that been like? Because it's just I read about the news and I see it on TV, but I'm stuck in my house. And that's great because I'm happy and healthy. You're seeing a lot of stuff up close and personal. Just what have been the few things that you've learned in the last couple of weeks being in your position?
So I've been really moved by the interactions I've had with people, whether they're patients or even other visitors. We've had a lot of people come in and donate masks, which are in such short supply and are greatly appreciated. I've loved, because of these donations, we're able to give out masks to patients, whereas before we wouldn't have been able to because the clinic just doesn't have enough. But interactions with patients have been really neat. Even aside from the pandemic, I've celebrated with people who just received their last chemo treatments. I've also listened and empathized with patients who may have received disappointing news regarding their prognosis. And I've also had the opportunity to interact with people from other cultures. I speak Spanish and doing a supplementary major in Spanish. And as the only volunteer who speaks Spanish, I get to interact with all of the Hispanic patients who come in. And that's been a lot of fun. I think they're always a little bit surprised to hear me start speaking. And so it's been really neat. And being there day after day, I see a lot of the same people. I've learned a lot of their names. And it's really nice seeing that side of medicine. I've shadowed doctors before, but never for an extended period of time. So I haven't had the chance to really form that relationship. And I think the physician-patient relationship is something that's often overlooked in medicine because a patient going to a doctor, especially a cancer patient in an oncology clinic, it's a scary and uncertain time in their lives. And I think it's really nice to know that you're in good hands, that you trust the person who's taking care of you. And that's something that I strive to be when hopefully one day I become a doctor.
When I read your blog, I was inspired and kind of humbled and very grateful and had a new perspective even after reading it because you're helping in a way that, quite frankly, I am not and can't. Mia, as her teammate, when you see a teammate do what Abby's done the last month or so, I mean, how meaningful is that to you? Does it inspire you? I mean, what's your reaction to when you either talk to her or hear about what she's doing?
I'm so proud of her. I mean, it's awesome. It's really awesome to see how she's helping people, how she's impacting people out there in the real world, and just being an awesome person. I don't know. It's really, really great to see. I'm so proud of her.
I want to go back to earlier this year a little bit, Mia, and talk about another great piece that Fighting Irish Media helped put on, and that was the Live Like Reed piece.
Oh my goodness. What a time. That was amazing.
I just want you to, and again, just like Abby did, I want to try to have you explain just, it was during the USC weekend, but you can explain what the whole process was with the bag and everything. And I'll link to the piece here, but if you could just give people that are listening just a refresher on what that weekend was like and what it meant to you to be a part of the weekend that honored Reed.
Right. So Reed Nishizuka was part of the Air Force, and he was actually a Notre Dame grad, and he was in ROTC. He actually passed away on a mission to Afghanistan, and he was just the kindest person. His legacy and his parents, so sorry, this is everywhere. So he passed away, and his parents wanted to continue his legacy of just being a kind person. I think that's what they wanted everyone to remember, and that's what everyone does remember about Reed. And he was put into this Folds of Honor program, which is a scholarship program for family members or people affected by a loss of life or a disability from military service. And so it was a really great program to get into. We were lucky enough to get in touch with the Nishizukas, Reed's parents, and they were just the nicest people in the world, just so full of grace and kindness and happiness despite what all they've gone through. And I think they just had so much love to share with us, and for them to be able to visit that weekend and spend time with us, and us being able to meet them and hear about Reed and hear about his legacy on their lives and how they want to continue that was just such a special experience. And they actually came to visit us again in Westbrook, which is not the city's actually Peoria in Arizona, and we had a tournament there, and it was our first tournament of the spring, and they surprise visited us, and it was just so amazing to see their smiling faces. Like, they just never stopped smiling or supporting us, and just the kindest people you'd ever imagine. And my dad actually got to meet them, and my dad still talks about it. Like, we were talking about them the other day, and it was just such a special experience to make that connection and to continue that connection. We're Facebook friends now. We direct message each other.
The ultimate sign of friendship. There you go, right there. Yeah, you crossed the barrier. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel so lucky to have met them.
Did you carry that bag all season? Is that how? I can't remember if so that was a bag you got to play with all year. Yep. That was kind of in honor of him, correct?
Right.
I mean, that was I would love watching that piece. It's very moving. I think everyone should watch it. And again, I'll link to it because, like you said, his parents, the way you described them, it just comes off the screen in the first few minutes. You're like, oh, these are people that I'd like to spend time with because they are so loving and caring. But I thought that was a great, hearing that and then hearing what you're doing. Like, you guys are involved with some really moving moments over the course of this last year. And I think you guys have been great ambassadors for the athletic program. I want to try to focus on some of the positives throughout the year. One thing that I think I've talked to a lot of these athletes that have had their season stopped, and we're talking about how it really was unfortunate when it went down. But when you think back to this season, what are some of the accomplishments, either as a team or as an individual, when you look back, even though you didn't get a chance to finish it? I know you guys had a chance to maybe host at home if a couple things went your way. Just when you think back to the accomplishments you guys had this year, what's going to stick out from this season? And I'll start with you, Abby.
So I think one thing that stood out in the fall was that individually, all 6 of us had our best round ever. And we showed a lot of potential. We were really excited for the spring. And even though the season got cut short, I think we're going to carry that momentum with us next season, knowing that the skill is there, and we're going to be really excited to put it all together when we get back.
I agree with that completely. I think we all had great scores. We had great achievements in the fall, and I was really excited for that in the spring. But, I think it'll carry over into next fall and hopefully next spring, that momentum. And something else is the cohesion that we felt. I don't think I've ever had so much fun and felt so much cohesion on a team. And there were 3 new freshmen, so half of the team was freshmen. Yeah. And just being able to talk to them and their fresh perspective, and they were just ready to go get them and have fun. And it was so great to be on a team with them and Abby and Claire. I'm really thankful that was my last experience as an athlete.
How did you build that environment in a team like golf that's so individual? I asked the men's team this because they spoke the same way. They said it was the tightest knit team they'd been a part of. How do you build that? I'm just curious as a sports fan, because again, you're out there by yourself. You're playing kind of for yourself a lot, but like you said, it's for the team. What did you guys do this year that made it maybe a little bit different than in years past?
You just got to have fun. Sometimes with golf, it's easy to get wrapped up in your head, and you're by yourself out there on the course, and every stroke counts. Every little thing you do is so magnified, and it really, your teammates depend on you, and there's a lot of pressure out there. But I think just kind of letting go, trusting yourself, trusting your teammates, that the scores will come. You just have to have fun and trust each other out there, I think.
What about you, Abby? Was there something you noticed?
Yeah, I think the love and support we have for each other on this team is unmatched. I know a lot of times golf teams tend to be very competitive amongst themselves, trying to be one of those 5 starting individuals, but that has never been the case since I've been here. We all put each other first. If I find out that I had the worst round of the team and it doesn't count for the day, I'm happy. That means my teammates played amazing. It's always been the team first, and this year specifically, Mia has been such a great team leader. As we were talking about before with Reed Nishizuka, she's the best representative to carry that bag because she is the most positive and loving person. And I think her leadership has really helped create the team.
You know, Mia, when you hear Abby talk about that impact you had as a senior, just, I know you're getting emotional, but just what's going through your head?
I honestly, I couldn't ask for any more than that. I really, really appreciate that. And I think that was one of my biggest concerns and fears. I've always been the only one in my year, and I was like the only freshman, only sophomore. So and I had huge shoes to fill coming in, because the graduating class was so strong and they were such great leaders. And so I was just worried about that. Like, what kind of leader will I be? And I know Abby's mentioned that, but I think you're going to be a great leader. And I think it's just, you got to connect with people in your own way and just get that everyone brings something unique to the table, and you don't have to be anyone else to be a good leader. Like, you can be yourself and be a good leader, and you just have to trust that.
The last thing I would want to ask about is, you know, in talking with the other teams, they've mentioned different people that have really helped them over the course of the last month, whether it was in those first few days or over the last few weeks that they've adjusted to being at home, and how the Notre Dame community has really stepped up. So it can be your teammates or your coaches, or it can be somebody else. But I guess I'm just curious, and I'll start with you, Abby, just who is somebody maybe within the Notre Dame community that over the course of the last 5-6 weeks has been really helpful as you've coped with the end of the season and then transitioning back home? Just who's someone that sticks out to you?
I think our coaches really stick out to me. They support us on and off the course. The head coach, she calls me every single week to make sure everything's going okay with my classes. We just had registration a couple days ago. She called to make sure that went well, and just always checking if I need anything. It's not even about golf, because a lot of golf courses are closed and practice is really sporadic. She just wants to make sure we're doing well academically, emotionally, and that means a lot to me.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was going to say our coaches too. They've been the number one source of contact we've had with the Notre Dame community, I think, so far. And they just want to know if we're doing okay. They really value the team cohesion, and we Zoom together. We have team Zooms, and I know it's tough for bigger teams, but I think it's really great to have team Zoom sessions. And we don't even talk about anything like important. It's just to see each other's faces and to like have a good laugh for a little bit and just re-bond.
The big winner in this has been Zoom. I mean, it's even beyond whether it's work or school. It's like, hey, quick Zoom after work and we'll talk. So it's been nice to see faces, like, because I know I'm like you guys. I'm kind of just in a house more or less alone, and I don't have a lot of people to interact with. So it's nice to catch up. I want to thank both of you for joining me on this episode. I know that everybody at Notre Dame, when the season came to an end, we felt awful for the student athletes that were affected by it and couldn't finish their seasons. But I think you two have both been great examples of giving perspective, right? Abby, with your work at the Oncology Center, and Mia earlier in the year, you know, with what you did with that, with the family of Reed. I think it speaks to how much more there is to life than sports, and that's been amplified during these last few weeks. So thank you for being great ambassadors for the university, and thanks for joining me on this episode.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have been listening to an official Notre Dame Athletics podcast presented by Fighting Irish Media.